Hello. Welcome to Meditation Nerd. I'm glad you're here. I hope you're doing well. Oh, excuse me. I don't know how to inhale today. Okay, let's try that again. So I wanted to do a bit of a chat today. This goes along with the naked pause we did yesterday. We're going to elaborate a little bit more on what I've been reading in trauma sensitive mindfulness. I do want to reiterate, I'm not coming at this from a professional. I'm not coming at this from a therapist or a clinician of any kind. I'm coming at this from a peer. I want to expand my meditative practice. I want to understand a little bit more about what happens with some of my meditative experiences. And I also want to make sure that I'm as aware as I possibly can be to give um, suggestions for modifications or anything of that type when I'm sharing the different styles of meditation that I'm doing. Because I think that the more supportive that we are of ourselves and each other, the better the meditative experience can be. And that way, we're not offering advice that, excuse me, may or may not be harming the person and their meditative practice. So, we're going to talk about the window of tolerance. So you're going to hear some papers rustling. I took notes mostly because I didn't want to think, oh, I'm going to remember, and then I don't. So I don't plan for this to be super long. I just wanted to give an overview of this. Let me find my spot. Okay. So, in regards to trauma, the window of tolerance, which was originally I was going to say brought to us, created, thought of, labeled, was Dan Siegel that created this within the realm of trauma. Something else I want to point out within the window of tolerance, the word arousal is used. Okay, in this context, it's not the commonly used arousal. In this context, it means our basic ability to show up for life. Okay. So, what the window of tolerance is, the example that was used in the book by the author was if you think of a river with two banks, the upper bank is going to be the one where it's hyper arousal. Again, our basic ability to show up for life. So, in hyper mode, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. There's more stress, there's higher heart rate, maybe there's some heat, you're feeling more anxious, right? This is labeled as chaos. On the other bank, generally beneath, this is hypo arousal. So you're feeling more numb, you're struggling to connect or to think. This is thought of, or this is labeled more as rigidity. Okay, excuse me, my kitty cat now wants to leave. Are you done, sweetie? All right. Love you, goodbye. Okay, sorry. And she's doing a pose for us. Excellent. Thank you, Avatar. Appreciate you. Okay, so when we're out of the window of tolerance or the river of integration, if you prefer that term, that was also used throughout the book. I didn't note who labeled it that, if that was the author or someone else that the author was quoting. We're considered to be dysregulated outside of the window of tolerance. Okay, so if you're hyper or you're hypo, either way, this can be a form of dysregulation. So I want to bring us to a little bit of an experience with this. This type of body scan, though, I want you to kind of broaden out of the body, right? So we're not going to necessarily do a body scan per se. I want you to notice, you can have your eyes open, soften your gaze, close your eyes, whichever you feel comfortable with, okay? I want you to notice if there's a space in your body that feels safe, okay? If it feels grounded, it feels welcoming, that type of thing, okay? I want you to just notice if there's a space in your body that feels like this, feels safe, okay? However that translates for you. Okay. For me, it's my feet. That seems to be the safest space for me. They feel pretty stable, they feel pretty solid. They're warm, but it's not overheated. So I'm going to go with feet. The reason for this exercise is so that you have a reference point for a safe space in your body. So if you're ever in a situation, meditative practice, where you're either feeling like you're numbing out or you feel like you're starting to amp up, right? Your anxiety's kind of going up, your thoughts are starting to go really fast. This way you have an anchor. You have a physical anchor. Now, that being said, I don't want to say that it's exclusive to physical anchors. This is just another option for focusing, because typically in meditation, what do they tell you to focus on? Your breath, right? And that's perfect. If the breath still works for you, if the breath feels safe, that's perfect. Maintain that. That's not a big issue. I wanted to make sure that I gave another way to look at this too, based on what I was reading, because sometimes the breath can add to the panic or numbness depending on what the experience is, right? Whether you're hyper out of the window of tolerance or you're hypo out of the window of tolerance. This way, you know that you have options for bringing yourself back into regulation or alignment. I call it alignment, that feels more appropriate for me. That's also the window of tolerance. So, I felt like this was really important because I generally will lead us back to our bodies, right? I generally will lead us back to the anchor within ourselves as a touchstone, as a place of solidness. And sometimes that's not going to be enough. Sometimes that's going to be too much, right? Sometimes there's stuff happening in the body, experiences, thoughts that are overwhelming, and we need another anchor to bring us back into our window of tolerance. So, a couple other things that I wanted to mention with this. If you're feeling either hyper or hypo, see if there are other aspects within your environment that you feel safe with, okay, that you feel you could reach to or connect to if your safe space in your body isn't enough or you need more grounding, such as a pet, right? Maybe getting up and walking around. Perhaps it's, holding something, an object that you feel safe with in your hands, and you're focusing on that, right? Until you feel that you're back in your window of tolerance. So that way you're grounded. And this way you have more options and it's less um, dysregulating, because that can be re traumatizing if we're not able to bring ourselves back into our window of tolerance. Okay. I think there was some this particular conversation. I'm not trying to go too deep with this. I just wanted to make sure that I am speaking about some highlights. Oh, I forgot to add the link to the book. I'll add that in just a moment. Because, like I say, I'm coming at this from a peer. I'm not approaching this as an expert because I'm not an expert. So I didn't want to go too deep on it. Oh, okay. That's what it was. So the author does specifically mention when we utilize the breath. One of the things, there's two specific mentions that he called out. One of them is you don't want to alter the breath too intensely. So you don't want to increase the breath too rapidly. You don't want to decrease the breath too rapidly. And in Kundalini Yoga, we do a lot of breath of fire, which is intensifying the breath pretty quickly. So, in those instances, it's a good idea to notice where your nervous system is when you start, right? So you kind of have a grounding to begin with, and okay, increasing my breath is not ideal for me. So I'm going to go ahead and just maintain normal breathing, right? Or nice, long, deep breathing if you feel that that's more appropriate. But this way you have a reference point for where you're at and what your nervous system is needing, because that's also part of the window of tolerance. It's our nervous system's way of alerting us to, okay, look, we're kind of amped up today, so we need calmer, more soothing aspects here. Or, you know what, I am super struggling today. It's really hard to not numb out or to think in a coherent way, right? It's feeling real sluggish today. So I do need a little bit more, maybe a walking meditation would be better. Okay, and then the last note was right, this is important. Okay, so with the breath modification, that's not going to be appropriate for everyone for some basic reasons, such as heart problems, asthma, emphysema, diabetes, migraines, anger management. Okay, these can all be contraindications for breath work. So always make sure that you're following your mental health program if you have one, if you're working with a trauma specialist, a mental health specialist, or if you have a certain medical outline that you set up with your doctor, please always stay within those bounds to also help you stay within your window of tolerance. Okay, so I am actually at the time that I wanted to be out. Okay, perfect. So those were just the basics that I wanted to go over. Um, I do have some other notes. I'm not sure that I want to go into all of those though, just because I wanted to keep this short and sweet. But I did want to call out the window of tolerance. Just like I say, it's important. There are a few points that the author did make that I feel are good to call out specifically because of the way that I interact with my own meditative practice. I want to make sure that people have awareness of their own states and that they're shifting however they need to, because ultimately your nervous system is going to guide you to what is needed each day. And I thought this was really insightful and very helpful. So I hope you found it helpful. Let me know if you have any additional thoughts or questions. And I will drop the link to the book specifically in the description after I end the live. So thank you for joining me and see you next time.